I scream, you scream, we all scream for oak scream? Yes, it's time to eat some more trees. I've got a crazy idea. What if we tried to make the world's oakiest ice cream? I mean, I'm talking taking the oak tree, distilling it down to its very essence, and putting it in ice cream, eating it out of an oak bowl, just oak everywhere. The oak trees are acorning. It's time to see what we can do to make some oak ice cream. So first things first, let's hop in the car, head up to the mountains, and get oaky. Okie dokie. What a beautiful spot this is right here. This is a trail that I grew up coming on. Ooh, okay. So today I want to do something that I do in all my videos, but I really want to take a very specific tact today. I want to pick the most basic, commonplace, looked over tree, the humble but fascinating Gambel oak. Quercus gambeli. Anyone in the Four Corner states knows this as scrub oak, but if you live elsewhere, you probably have a different tree you call scrub oak. Scrub oak tends to be a catch-all term for a wide variety of small shrubby oaks. It's a tree that varies widely in size. You can get whole fields that are nothing more than these little tiny twigs, more or less, all the way up to pretty big, good-sized trees. And it's a drought-tolerant plant. They're very fire-resistant as they share a root system in many cases and send up clones of themselves. Something the quaking aspen deservedly gets a lot of credit and attention for. But the Gambel oak does it just as well. Another thing it can give us is acorns. If you're anything like me, seen countless acorns in your life, and you've probably never eaten one. Now, most species of acorns raw are edible, but just aren't very palatable. And that's all thanks to tannins. Oaks are very rich in tannins. They're wood, with oak galls, extremely rich in tannins. Acorns as well. Question is, are we gonna be able to find any acorns that are any good? Well, this one's like, look at the color of this one. This one's like bright pink. This one looks good. As soon as I bite down on the shell, I can usually tell whether or not an acorn is good. And oh yeah, this you can see. Look at that. Beautiful. Gambel oak is a species of oak that actually has fairly sweet acorns. Just raw. You know, I can bite right into that. And I'm getting some mild astringency, but this one is actually pretty good. What I will say, oh, look at that view behind us. If I ever just sit and eat a handful of these acorns, even though they're not that astringent, it'll build up. So I'm gonna gather as many as we can. We're gonna process some of them. I'm gonna head further up this ridge line here. Not gonna be taking any wood from up here because as luck has it, I've got a lot of Gambel oak wood already in the shop at home. It's time to show you all the cool things that the Gambel oak can do. Anyway, I just popped a tree zit. That smells good. Douglas fir is distracting me, as it always does. Who hasn't been distracted by Douglas fir in their time? Okay, bye.
The main thing to look out for when gathering acorns are little holes like this, which are a clear indicator that the worms got here before you did. Most of the trees up here were pretty bare, but I found several where the acorns were really freshly fallen, so I scooped up as many of those off the ground as I could. I found that it's really a numbers game when it comes to acorns, so definitely just want to do whatever you can to bring as many home as possible, because the vast majority that you find are going to be wormy or buggy. Now, once you do bring them home, an easy way to start sorting the good from the bad is by first doing a float test, as any bad acorns will float to the top and the good ones should sink to the bottom, but as you'll see in a minute, a lot of bad ones were still left on the bottom after this step. Still though, this saves me the time of having to crack into any of these later on, so it's worth the time. Now, I read that sun drying over the course of several days really helps with shelling the acorns depending on the species of oak, but lucky for me, Gambel oak acorns are actually super easy to shell as is, so I just left them out there long enough to fully dry out, and that was good enough for me. To shell them, I just grabbed a hammer and got to whacking. What we're looking for is any acorn that's whole and healthy looking. To toss away any that have turned brown or being actively eaten by weevils. It's pretty easy to tell which ones are good and which ones are bad. Now, the shelled acorns can start to oxidize really quickly, so I dropped the good ones into some water and spent the next several hours working through the entire crop, and here's what I was left with. So these were all the good acorns, and this trash bag was all the bad ones. Now it's time to process our acorns to make make them more palatable, and the traditional way to do that is to grind your acorns into a fine flour and then cold leach out the tannins using water. But since Gambel oak acorns aren't too bitter to begin with, I want to try chopping them into small chunks that I'll be able to use in our ice cream. Otherwise, the process should be pretty much the same as if it were a flour. Just gonna add it into a container with some cold water, agitate, and then let it sit in the fridge overnight, and by the next day, the water should look like this. And that dark brown color is evidence that the water is indeed leaching tannins out of the acorns. So we're just gonna pour that tannic water out, replace, shake it back up, and then back into the fridge for another 24 hours. And it's just a matter of repeating this process every day for several days up to weeks, depending on how bitter your acorns are. And that gives me plenty of time to head on down to the garage and turn my attention to the pile.
Well, during my brief hiatus, I took the liberty to rearrange the pile, get a little bit more organized. The downside to a fully rearranged pile is now if I want something down here, it's this much harder to get to because before the pile was kind of more out this way, wasn't quite so high. Obviously today I'm looking for some Gambel oak. Back in 2020, a couple of my friends, their across the street neighbor, had redoing their lot. They cut down a whole bunch of Gambel oak trees and they called me up and said, Justin, we got some good trees here for you. And I came and snagged a bunch of them. The downside of that is I didn't properly dry any of these, as is the case with pretty much everything on this pile, is for bowl turning especially. But for most types of turnings, if what you're looking for is something that doesn't crack or warp, what you want to do is properly dry them. That's something that I'm usually too lazy and impatient to do. One of these days, I will walk you through the full correct drying process. That day will not be today. So, Gambel oak. We've got one here, got one here. Got one here that I did split in half. This is, I think, the one that I'm gonna want to make a bowl out of. This is another promising one, just because there's a lot going on with this piece. There's another one, small. We're in luck. We got another one over here on the side that isn't covered by much. But let's reposition the camera and you'll get to watch me try and struggle to pull these things out without toppling the entire pile. I thought this was gonna be our best bet, but taking a closer look, we've got a couple issues. Pretty deep chainsaw gouge there, and two, this crack looks to wanna run fairly deep into this. I don't know that it's gonna be the right choice for us. There's another one that I'd split in half. It's gonna help control the cracking, definitely, to get that pith out of there. Still not dried properly, but it's gonna be better than a full log, most likely. Less cracking, make a nice little bowl. But these two right here give us a pair of crotches to work with. This one's a little bit bigger. This is likely to have some cracks through it, but nothing we haven't dealt with before. If I get a little bit of ice cream on my palm or on my lap, that's okay. You know, what I'm here to do is show you cool wood and make stuff out of trees. So let's grab the chainsaw, start cutting into this, shape it up, see what happens. This is gonna be interesting. My garage just flooded. We just had a storm roll in, and the 12 years I've lived in this house, the garage floods every time it rains. My driveway slopes downward, and there's a drain at the bottom of the driveway that just has never really properly drained. I've tried to clear it out a couple times, but the hole was quite small. And so yesterday, I finally was a responsible homeowner and went and rented a little jackhammer, cleared out the hole a bit more so I could start scooping some mud out. But all this to say, while the garage was flooding, I was frantically trying to see if I could fit my sump pump down in there to help me clear it out a little bit more easily. And it didn't quite fit, so I tried to cut the sides of my sump pump off using my bandsaw. And that worked quite well, but there was a screw hidden in there. This hit up against the screw. So the blade is probably in rough shape, and a nice thick piece of oak is a good test on that. I don't know, let's see how this goes. Probably in for a bit of a disaster. It's cutting, but I need a new blade. It's gonna have its fair share of cracks, but you know what? we're in this adventure together, so. Ow, dust. Let's go. I didn't center this properly. I need to recenter this. I could tell it was too far this way. All right, moment of truth time. Moment of truth time. All right, we're gonna have a pretty decent bowl out of this, I think. Let's go. Ow, ow. Man, this one's spitting some sharp shards at me. Ow! Need to get these larger so they don't sting so much. Once we get turned more around, we can get even cuts on here and it won't be spitting these sharp shards at me.
Oak trees and their wood falls into two primary categories, white oaks and red oaks. You can usually tell them apart by the general shapes of their leaves and by the properties of their wood, with white oak being a little bit more brown or tan and having a more closed grain structure, and red oak being a little bit more red or pink and having a more open grain structure. And our tree that we're working with today, Gambel oak, Quercus gambeli, is a species of white oak, which means that generally it's going to share a lot of properties with the really famous white oak trees, like the American white oak, the English oak, bur oak, and the likes. Now, I've already talked a lot about this tree's acorns, but the tree's wood also has a lot of traditional indigenous uses. It's a really excellent hot burning firewood that's widespread and readily available. It's also useful in making tools and fence posts. Since it's a smaller, scrubbier tree, you're just not going to see it used in any real commercial modern sense. When you see white oak lumber in use for anything from barrels to cabinetry, flooring, furniture, etc., that's not going to be Gambel oak. That's pretty much always going to be one of its larger cousins. Okay, now we got to talk about what white oak wood can taste like. That's right, toasted oak wood can impart a really unique and delicious flavor. Think, for example, of whiskey, wine, bourbon, and beer. All these are often aged in charred oak barrels, which help to not only preserve the liquid inside, but can also impart flavors like vanilla, caramel, and, well, that classic smoky, oaky taste. So, will I be able to impart oak wood flavor into some ice cream? Well, we'll find out about that soon enough, but to make sure the ice cream stays in the bowl, I'm going to fill in these cracks with some epoxy, even though, man, I hate this stuff so much.
Okay, it's been a day. Is now cured. We've got them filled in.
So now it's just a matter of shaving off that excess resin. Getting a final shape of the outside and turning a tenon so that we can flip it around and put it on the chuck.
Okay. You know what? Garage smells so good right now. There's nothing else that really smells like oak wood. Isn't it cool how different and unique each species of wood can sometimes smell? What a plethora of scents there are when working with different species of wood. I mean, think about it. You can walk into a room full of people and say, everyone, I want everyone to imagine the smell of wood. You could have a room full of 50 people and each one of them could be imagining a totally different scent. I mean, one person could be thinking about Western red cedar, that classic spicy pencil-like smell. Someone else might be thinking about pine, that sweet resiny smell. You could be thinking about maple, something a little less in your face, more subdued. And Of course, today we've got oak, which is an example of a smell that I have a hard time describing without just saying it's oaky. It almost feels like you can smell that astringent tannic property of the tree. It's almost like it's drawing the moisture out of your smell in a very good way. It's one of the things I love, is just throwing a random species of wood on here and seeing what does it look like, what does it smell like, what does it feel like. There's just no shortage of uniqueness to it all. I love it so much. I mean, classic example. This right here is a piece of Palo Verde wood. This was sent to me when I was working on that very first map I did, where each state in the US was made out of wood from its official state tree. This is Arizona's official state tree, Palo Verde. And when I started cutting into it to make the state of Arizona out of it, I could not believe it. I was like, what? This smells like popcorn. My whole garage smells like popcorn. What is going on? And that is the wood of the Palo Verde tree. Smells exactly like popped popcorn. It's wild. And then you can throw a tree like the Russian olive on there, which is beautiful, always makes something really nice looking, but it smells exactly like burning manure. Just permeates everything too. The whole garage smells like it for a day or two. I smell like it. In fact, a couple days ago, I was in here making a bowl out of a piece of Russian olive wood, and I finished up, came in, changed into a new set of clothes, went to join my wife in watching, it's October right now, and during the month of October, we have a tradition where we watch one spooky movie every day of the month. We call it our Shocktober series. I was joining her to watch our Shocktober film, and we were sitting there, and she turned to me and said, "What does that smell?" And I had to say, that is me. That is the smell of Russian olive wood, and that's why I smell like burning horse and cow manure right now. So I went up and took a shower to get it all off of me. But yeah, one of the true joys of this practice, in my opinion, is just the wide range of possibility you'll get in how different types of trees are going to smell when you start cutting into the wood. So cool. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping we'll be able to do with the ice cream I'm making, is take the taste of the smell of that oak wood and impart it into some ice cream, which is, to me, such a fun thing to be able to do. You know, try to see if we can taste that smell. Combining the senses, you know?
All right, now we get to start rough turning out the inside. I'm shooting for kind of a different shape with this bowl, wanting some steep, sharp sides, which I knew would be a bad idea, especially with the swirling, interlocking crotch grain in the bottom of the bowl. Turning the inside of the bowl always goes a lot smoother when you're making, well, bowl-shaped cuts. That's what this gouge is made to do. But hey, what am I here for if not to make some poor choices for you all to enjoy? And you know what? I think this is actually going to work out okay. Now that it's roughed out, I'm going to do another dose of epoxy on the inside now and just do my best to get it deep down into those cracks for us and let it cure overnight.
Yep, another day has gone by, and now we have the inside resin cured. It's got this cool figure running through it. I think we're gonna be okay. I think we'll have something here. I'm gonna go resharpen my tools, throw this up on there, try to take as little of the inside out as possible. We don't wanna have to dig too deep. I get the feeling that in some of these smaller cracks, the resin didn't go super deep in there, so I don't wanna turn too much away, because we'll be left with some cracks that aren't filled. So we'll have ourselves a finished bowl. It'll be ice cream time.
Okay, after some gentle finishing cuts and plenty of sanding, I think we're actually looking pretty okay, which means it's time to oil this bowl up and see how our Gambel oak wood is looking, and oh boy, that is wonderful. The warm tones of that heartwood from goldens to deeper browns, and look at that curling, swirling crotch grain. That is some great oak toyancy. Now that the bowl is all done, let's check on the acorns. Still just draining, adding more water, and letting it hang out in the fridge, and I want to give it a few more days, so that leaves us the perfect opportunity to head back into the garage and grab that other crotch piece, because you know what? I think the map needs a new state, doesn't it? Now, the Gambel oak is a good candidate for any of the four corner states, especially Utah and Colorado, and since we just did Utah last episode, it feels like it's the perfect time for the ultra complicated shape of Colorado. This will test the limits of my ability to cut fine details, so let's hold our breath and hope for the best. The more I think about it, the more I really like Gambel oak for Colorado, because it's basically the border of where the big titans of American white oaks like Quercus alba, Quercus macrocarpa, it's where their native range ends and this scrubby mountain relative of theirs takes hold. It's Colorado's most abundant and widespread oak, where you'll most likely find it in foothills and lower mountain elevations where they thrive in dry, rocky soil and sunny south-facing slopes. And there it is, the Colorado map piece is all done, and honestly I'm actually really stoked with how this turned out. If you caught the original official state tree map series, I was always a little disappointed with myself on Colorado's blue spruce piece. The wood I found for that one didn't really have any grain in it, it just looked really plain. So I'm thrilled for my Colorado neighbors that we've got such a lovely, gorgeous piece for them up on this new map. I couldn't be happier with all that swirling grain, those colors, and even more oak toyancy. Okay, so back to the acorns now. So the best way to know if they're done leaching is to simply taste them. If they're not bitter and there's no bitter aftertaste, then you're good to go. I drained and squeezed out as much water as I could, and then the next step is to dehydrate. A dehydrator is going to work best, but I don't have one, so I went with using my oven, propping the door open with a wooden spoon, and going with a low temperature around 150 degrees Fahrenheit until fully dry. I think honey roasting these might work well, so I warmed up some honey in the microwave, and to that added a little bit of salt, some cinnamon, some ground mace, and a pinch of cayenne pepper. I'm hoping that the sweetness and warm spices plus a little bit of a kick are going to go well with these acorns and also really pair nicely with the oak wood flavor of the ice cream itself. After mixing it all together with the chopped acorns, I threw it all into a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes or so. Then, fresh out of the oven, I sprinkled on some brown sugar and quickly scraped off of the parchment paper and right onto the tray to cool. And now, time for the ultimate test. Can we make oak wood flavored ice cream? Now, if we just try to use regular plain old oak wood, it's going to leave us with a really woody flavor. But here's the secret. If we toast it, it's going to change the game entirely. So, after taking some of our leftover scraps and chopping and cutting them into chip-sized pieces, I'm just going to place this whole tray into a 350-degree oven. I ended up leaving mine in for about an hour and 15 minutes, and it's looking nice and toasted, and my house smells amazing. Now you just add as many of these wood chips as feels right to the base for your ice cream. I'm going with a mix of heavy cream and milk. Then bring that to a rolling boil and lower to a simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then remove that from the heat and let it infuse for 30 minutes to an hour. And I don't know why I wasn't expecting this, but the oak has imparted a tan oak color to the cream, and that makes me unreasonably happy. And now you can use this oak infused cream as the starter for whatever your favorite ice cream recipe is. I also don't see any reason why this wouldn't work with a non-dairy alternative, so if that's your speed, you should give that a try as well. All right, my custard base has rested in the fridge overnight, hopefully giving those flavors even more chance to develop. And now it's time to churn it up and add the candied acorns, which I've also been storing in the fridge, by the way. Acorns don't really have the best shelf life, so it's best to keep them in there. And already I feel like this is coming together really nicely. I'm gonna call it Oak Scream, and while that hardens in the freezer, that's right, it's time to head back to the garage one last time to, you guessed it, carve an oak wood spoon. I mean, come on, I essentially just turned an oak tree and its entire essence into a bowl of ice cream. You didn't think I'd let you watch me eat that with a metal spoon, did you?
These ray flecks that give oak its stripiness, it's really fun. I find it to be fun. Much more fun than carving into this hard Gambel oak. I haven't hand carved in a while, and you really feel when your hands get weak from lack of hand carving. I actually cut my thumb right there, just a little bit on the corner of the bowl while it was on the lathe. The outside edge of the bowl was actually quite sharp, and I was either cutting the inside or sanding it, I don't remember. Just sliced it, just a tiny bit, not bad, barely bled. But it's right there where when I'm making certain types of cuts, I like to push on my thumb to help give me that extra leverage. And so I'm pushing down right on it and it hurts and I don't like that. So I'm kind of like tucking it under and pushing there now, kind of changing my form. But I miss being able to do that. These are the prices I pay to give you this.
And there we have it, the oakiest oak scream ever made. The white oak, that bastion of resoluteness and fortitude, distilled down into a tasty frozen treat. Served up in an oak bowl with an oak spoon, my madness truly knows no bounds.
I'm so used to making a dessert dish on this channel that is ultimately a little too small that it's almost kind of refreshing to have this one that is much too large for a single ice cream bowl. Also, I gotta admit, out of all the crazy tree ice cream recipes that I've whipped up in the history of this channel, this is the one I'm the most curious about. Can't wait to see how much of that oaky wood flavor we got in there, how these candied acorns turn out, especially now that they're kind of frozen and harder by the ice cream. So let's dive right into it. Wow. Okay, I'm just gonna be straight up with you. This is a winner. Oh, it's not like this is just good as like a let's turn an oak tree into an ice cream flavor experiment. Genuinely really good. The ice cream itself, you definitely get that oak flavor. It's not like you're getting a smoky flavor at all. I love it. It's almost like caramel, vanilla, a little bit of astringency there. Kind of like a whiskey bourbon flavor without the alcohol. And then the candied acorns, I was a little worried about them because when I first pulled them out of the oven and let them cool off, I wanted them to be crunchier than they were. And I was hoping that some time in the freezer would help us out with that. And it definitely has. I also wasn't 100% sure if we leached all the tannins out of there, and I think we have. There's not a note of bitterness. The candy coating is delicious, got a little kick of spice in there, a little bit of nuttiness. You know, sometimes people ask me, does this stuff actually taste good? There's only been a few of these experiments I haven't genuinely enjoyed, but this is downright delicious. Oh, wow. If you have the means to try this out at home, you absolutely should. Go gather some acorns, go get some wood chips. You don't need to make your own. Buy some toasted oak chips, give this a try. And let me know if you do try this. I'm eager to hear how it works out for all of you. It's gonna be really hard to not eat this entire thing right now. Oh man. Wow. Well, there you have it. I answered the question that nobody was asking. Can we make the world's oakiest ice cream? The answer was yes, absolutely. It was a smashing success. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. A surprise back-to-back map episodes as well. Was not expecting that myself, but you know what? Gambel Oak just felt like the perfect fit for our map up here. Of course, I want to take a minute to thank all of my patrons and members here for keeping this channel going. So as always, thanks for hanging out. Go hang out with the cool tree, and we'll see you here next time. I'm gonna go eat some more oak scream. Okay, bye.